But here's Joe Rebo, a slip from Tutan, Rebo! A bolt from the blue! Joe Rebo!
Hi there and welcome everybody to the live Wednesday Bulletin. It feels like it's been a while since I've said that one, but it's glad to be back. Today I'm joined by Andy. How are you doing today, Andy?
Very well indeed. Cold and flu symptoms aside, same as everybody else in Scotland by the looks of it. Absolutely fine. Glad to be on.
Yes, it's one of the signs and symptoms of an old firm flu, isn't it? The day after is having a pretty hoarse voice. And I'm joined by Scott. How are you doing today, Scott?
Very good, mate. I'm pleased that you let me know it's Wednesday because I'm still suffering with this what day is it sort of thing. You know, the whole Christmas and New Year, you're not really too sure what day it is, you know. So I'm pleased that you've told me I'm halfway through the week.
Well, that's it. I think as like everybody else, I've just been marking it from how many days away the old firm has been or how long it's gone now. But there we go. On today's show, as always, we've got loads and loads to talk about. And just in reference to everybody in the comments there, we will be talking about the old firm game on Monday there. Discuss some individual performances from the guys. Maybe seen a wee bit of this on Twitter. Is it maybe time to have a discussion about Tav and maybe not saying drop him completely, but I think there's certainly a discussion to be had around giving him a wee rest every now and again, especially with Devine in there. A lot of criticism of the substitutions, which is maybe something we never covered on the immediate post-match reaction. We're going to get into some transfer news, seeing as it is January. We've got the Kent and Morelos situation and how that's kind of changed. I'd maybe like to do a wee sort of... Beale did say that it was 5 games we'd want to judge the team after. Maybe get a wee sort of 5-game review with the guys as well. And some areas where we need to strengthen in January. But I'm going to come to you first, Scott Cameron, on this. On this day in 1995, Rangers drew 1-1 with Celtic at home. There was no McCoist, no Haitley due to injury. But Ian Ferguson scored a goal in this game. If I remember, I can't remember the game itself, but I watched it back, and it was a sort of a ball into the box from McCall. Charlie Miller sort of gets onto it, and it's a good finish by Ian Ferguson. It's title number 7 and 9 in a row, and we won this season with a 16-point gap over Motherwell, who finished in second place that year. Scott. We've already discussed maybe not two great memories of that game, but you just want to talk about how wonderful Ian Ferguson was for 2 minutes.
I've got a rough recollection of the game. I mean, you're missing McCoist and Haitley, but we still had, that was Brian Laudrup's first season. You know, you still had Gordon Jury, Peter Houstra, Charlie Miller still playing in the middle of the park. Basil Bolly was actually playing. That was one of the few old firms. Ian Ferguson was just a proper Rangers player. You know, when he came to Rangers, he was a sort of box-to-box midfield player, but he sort of had to tailor his role to allow your Gazas and your Laudrups in latter stages to do what they do. You know, but what I would love an Ian Ferguson in the middle of the current Rangers team. You know, just somebody that knows what the club's about, but was a player. You know, I mean, he had this reputation as this hard man, but he's a good passer of the ball. He could get you goals, and he loved scoring against Celtic. I don't think he'd done it very often. He didn't score a lot of goals for Rangers, but Ian Ferguson was just a proper blue nose, and I think he's just above my head there, celebrating an old firm. I think it was 97 when Eric Bo Anderson scored the 2 goals. So Ian Ferguson, just a proper Ranger, and one of my favourites over the years.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will echo that sentiment there, Scott. Andy, I'll come to you in this next one. You've got this. Some of these are always up and down. I always like to give the WTP 72 account out. Give a wee shout out to them on Twitter. That's where I get these from. I love reading them every morning when I get up. On this day in 2007, Rangers and Paul Le Guen go their separate ways not long after Paul Le Guen dropped Barry Ferguson as Rangers captain. I think we were actually, oddly enough, looking at a list of players that he'd signed today in the group chat, which was always a nice wee interesting discussion. Papac being the only real success. There was so many names in there I'd totally forgotten about, but not too dissimilar to Gio in terms of really poor domestically, but in Europe, outstanding. I think he was unbeaten. Your thoughts on Paul Le Guen and his time as Rangers manager, please, Andy?
I remember being very excited about the appointment. I loved Alec McLeish, I really did. Alec McLeish gave us some smashing helicopter Sundays. They were He was a fantastic manager. I liked the teams, the way he set up. With him leaving and Le Guen coming in, I thought it was a coup, a total coup. I thought, this guy, he's a Frenchman. They're on the ascendancy. He's going to be on the ascendancy. It was all mentioned how fit his teams were, how fit he was. It was, in fact, was he not late to arrive because he was running some sort of Saharan marathon or something like that? So I thought, if he's fit, he's going to make a fit team. His signings, I was very excited about. Jeremy Clement, Philip Sebo, the least said about Philip, the best probably, and Sasa Papac, but he went on to be a massive Rangers player, one of the fans' favourites, obviously. I often wondered how risky he must have thought it was to drop the captain, to drop Barry Ferguson and strip him of the captaincy. Turned out to be all right as a Rangers fan. With that happening, him leaving, it brought back Ali and Walter, and the rest is history. But without that probably wouldn't have happened. So, no, I was excited at the appointment. Didn't work out in any way, shape or form, and it got to the stage, the sooner the better.
Yeah, that's it, exactly. And it's just, I think everybody knows once a manager's time's up, and it was just, as soon as the news came out that him and Ferguson were through, I think you'll find it hard push to find Rangers supporters that would back Paul Le Guen over Barry Ferguson. But there you go. Right, we'll go into a brief summary of the Old Firm game on Tuesday here. We'll just cover the goals sort of quickly. I know everybody watching, and I know you guys obviously both there and seen it. So first 5 minutes, Rangers concede a really, really poor goal. Slack pass from Morelos, picked up by Maeda. For me, I think the most criminal aspect of this goal was Tav's effort to win the ball. I was going mental at the time. Celtic go 1-0 up in the 5 minutes with an absolute gift of a goal. There's a bit of a momentum swing around about 30 minutes. After half-time, Rangers come out, all guns are blazing. Kent has an excellent finish from a run from Sakala. He found him. And then it's the penalty of all penalties. I've seen things online suggesting that Sakala stamps on Starfelt, which is hilarious. Scores a goal there, Tav, and then a comedy errors, quite frankly, for their third goal round about the 87-minute mark. I'll come to you first, Scott Cameron, on this. I'm just keen to get your overall thoughts in the game, how it went, and how you thought Rangers performed in large parts of that game. I'll take you off mute there, Cammy.
Aye, the first goal is just a shocker. Morelos plays that pass. How many times have we seen him play that blind pass over to Tav on the far side? Doesn't get any lift on it. So that's the first mistake. I think Lundstrom's a bit sloppy prior to that, and then Tav has to do better. It's as simple. You can't sugarcoat it. It's very, very poor. I think he's half-hearted in the way that he goes in. Maeda goes through, finishes it with a plum. First, for about 10-15 minutes after that, I must confess I was fearing a doing. At that point, I thought, if they score again here, everything's going through your head. What's happened in previous Old Firm games across the park when they've scored 2-3 goals in the first 25-30 minutes and the game's out of sight. But they never, as much as they were first to the ball, they were moving the ball about a lot quicker. We couldn't get a foothold in it at all. As the half went on, we came into it a bit more. Morelos charges down Joe Hart, because I think they are stinking at the back. Starfelt is absolutely honking, and you can see why they've signed a centre half to replace him, because he's stealing 11 as a centre half, to be honest with you. So we're pressing and that sort of thing, and you get a couple of chances. Morelos has a couple of headers that he probably, a fully fit and firing Morelos probably sticks at least one of them away. But
yeah,
we come in at half time, and I think I'd said before the game, stay in the game for as long as possible. So you're chatting to the boys round about you, and you're going, the most important thing is we don't lose a goal here straight after the break. And I thought for 15, 20 minutes after the break, I thought we were excellent. 2 goals inside 10 minutes. Sakala does fantastic run across the park, picks out, showed a bit of composure, which is something that he doesn't really have in his locker. Picks out Ryan Kent. Ryan Kent, instead of sticking it into the Copeland rear, sticks it into the top corner. Fantastic. That's the Ryan Kent, and that's the sort of finish that we want to see more of from Ryan Kent. That's what he is capable of. You then obviously keep on going. Sakala wins the penalty, and a fantastic penalty from Tav. I think that's at 2-1. Place is bouncing. You're on the ascendancy. Lundstrom, I thought for the period before he went off, I thought was excellent. I thought properly dominant. Back to the Lundstrom of the latter part of last season. I thought he was really, really good. And then obviously the rib injury that he's been carrying for a few weeks caused him to go off. But at the game, I don't know about you guys, I was saying we need to get a third goal. This lot always cause problems in the latter stages of games, and what happened. So again, a terrible goal. But we could have put the game to bed when Tillman had the opportunity. He just took an extra touch, and then I think it was probably Carter Vickers has the block. But at that point, you go 3-1. That's it. Game over for me. 2-1. I think it's just too tight, and then we give another goal away, and very, very, very frustrating. But I think 2 days after it, the frustration is still there, but we were competitive for long spells in that match, and I think there's nothing to fear going forward.
Yeah, I think I agree with that there in terms of, I think it was Craig that said on the immediate post-match reaction that he totally bought into the media hype behind Celtic and how good they are, and I think it was down to us. A lot of people are saying that Celtic had an off day. I don't think it was. I think it was the fact that Beale changed it around 30 minutes that resulted in them playing so poorly. But Andy, I'd love to get your thoughts on the game as a whole, and then we'll maybe get into the specifics of some players.
I feel exactly the same way Scott. Scott summed up my feelings pretty much to a T there. I don't think he went quite as far as I shall with regards to the first goal against us.
Yeah.
It was more than just annoying what Tav done. That was absolutely shocking. That was 100% his ball. Now, he's the Rangers captain. He's been here before countless times. He's been in the end of doings countless times from Celtic, unfortunately. There's no secret that Maeda is rapid. There is no secret in that. There is no secret that if Celtic get a foothold at the start of an Old Firm game, or any game really, they can go on and they can score 3, 4 and 5. You do not do that. Okay, it was a bad mistake from Morelos. These things happen, but Tav could have dealt with it. That should have been right into the east enclosure where I was sitting. It happened all in front of me. It should have been into the east enclosure. It could have been anywhere. Take him and the ball. Take the booking. He's a captain. Do what you have to do. It was absolutely shocking, and it's kind of testament to the season he's been having thus far. We'll get into Tav in a bit more depth shortly, I'm quite sure. But as for the rest of the game, Scott summed it up perfectly. I was furious with Tillman as well. Just one touch too many. If he just that wee fraction earlier and lifts it over Joe Hart, it's 3-1. The game's done. We'll get into the substitutions. Was he too conservative? I think possibly. I don't know. You see it online that folk are saying Arfield rather than Sands. Who's to say that if Arfield comes on, that they break throughs, and with four attacking players, they break throughs and they get the equaliser anyway. Bringing Sands on certainly gives Callum McGregor more space to start playing football. That obviously happened. Barisic sitting 5 yards too deep, playing Moy onside for the equalising goal. That is infuriating. But Scott is right as well. On the whole, I was happy with the way we competed, because I'm very similar to Craig. I never caught the post-match, Kyle, unfortunately, but from what you said there, I'm very similar to Craig. I bought into the hype. I couldn't see any way of getting a result against Celtic. Such was the way they'd been playing, or what I've been reading about and whatnot. That didn't materialise, and that's good. I'm happy with that. I'm quite happy Michael Beale's here. I'm quite happy with his tactics. We're in January. We can get some signings in. I hope he's as good as his word, that it's going to be signings that affect the first team. If that is the case, then I am quite positive about the future.
Yeah, I agree with you there as well. I think that, again, it highlighted the gap. It wasn't as big as what it's been made out to be. But look, Scott, I'll come to you on this. There's a couple of players. There's 5 players I've written down that I'm really keen to get people's thoughts on. I think you know one, because I always ask you your opinion on this guy, and I try to get you to sway from it. But the first one I'm going to come to was a guy that Andy touched on there, was Tillman. Okay, that chance did frustrate the life out of me. Even seeing it back again in the highlights later on Monday evening, I didn't realise quite how good a chance it actually was. But overall, for me, I was surprised by Tillman in terms of his work rate. He won the ball up the pitch quite an awful lot, and he didn't seem to see that sort of that Berbatov demeanour that I talk about sometimes. He just seemed to be a lot more up for it and on it. What was your thoughts on Tillman in this game?
I think it pretty much encapsulates Tillman, to be honest with you. You know, he was pretty anonymous for the majority of the first half, but comes into it far more after. But I thought, as a whole, we came into it far more after the break. But he showed far more effort and application. I was worried when I saw the team that I thought we could get overrun in the middle of the park. As much as I wasn't wanting Jack, Kamara and Lundstrom, I thought we would have protected ourselves a bit more. But I thought Tillman, I think he's developing into and I think the comment there, he's got a long way to go, but everything's there for him to be a really good player for Rangers, on the assumption that we're going to sign him come the summer. But I thought he contributed well. You know, I mean, the game passed him and everybody else by in September when we took a doing across there. You know, but I think certainly he's learned from that, and I think he's learning every week in Scottish football. I mean, Scottish football isn't normal football, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? He's came from an environment where it's played at a slightly slower tempo and what have you, you know. And I think I'm quite happy with Tillman, and I think he's going to have a big role to play in us being successful in the second half of the season.
Yeah, 100%. And Andy, the next player I'll come to, who I think I even posted in the group pre-game that Sakala was giving me the absolute fear when I saw his name in the team sheet, but he was, for once, I agreed with the sponsors' man of the match in terms of he was the best player on that pitch in terms of output, desire. I thought some of his touches and when Beale did allude to in his post-match press conference, he tweaked the way that he was running at them forward. How do you think Sakala performed in that game?
A hell of a lot better than I expected him to. I can be quite sceptical when I see his name in the team sheet for the same reason as everybody else. He seems to just run about, and sometimes the kind of composure's not there. I bumped into our very own Reese on the way to Ibrox on Monday morning, and he assured me it was going to be the fashion show. But Reese assures us that every game.
Yeah.
So I took that with a pinch of salt, and I wasn't overly confident. However, it turned out to be. I was very impressed, second half particularly. Very impressed. His directness, his run for Kent's goal, I thought was fantastic. I thought he had their left back on absolute toast for the whole of the second half. Everything good was coming down his side. I was more than happy with the way he played. I'll actually go one further. I think if they kept him there, it would have been a different result, because that was the only kind of outball we were having at that time, was him down that side. And when we lost that, I think we lost a wee bit of our shape. No, very happy with it. And that's not often I say that, because I'm quite sceptical of Fashion Sakala. When it comes to the future, I think I would like to see a kind of front three of Kent, Kolak and Hadji I'd like to see that materialise in the future, but I don't know if it will. Is Sakala good enough to stay there? Yes, he is. You've also got to look at his numbers, Kyle. I think, did I read that is 3 goals, 2 assists and a penalty win in the last 4 games?
Yeah.
Now, they numbers speak for themselves. You don't drop somebody with their numbers, so he's not going to be dropped. I just hope he can keep it up.
Yeah, totally agree with you there. He was outstanding yesterday, and I think that's the player we kind of all hoped we would be seeing. And notice that nobody's mentioned that he's still raw, and it was a raw performance yesterday. That is something, closer to the finished article. Right, Scott Cameron, I'm going to ask you about it. I'm dying to hear what you've got to say about him, and let us know in the comments, because I think this guy's a performance divided a lot of people's opinion. It was Alfredo Morelos. A couple of things I'm going to say about it. He did have that poor pass that led to their goal. I'm not blaming him entirely for it. I felt there was 2 chances that he should have scored, at least one of the 2 of them, right before the break. But to his credit, I don't think it was a coincidence that on the 30-minute mark, that instant you talked about before, where he applied the high press to Joe Hart, I think that's where we saw a bit of a mentality shift in the team. And okay, he didn't have the best game yesterday, but that's what Alfredo gets you sometimes, Scott.
100%. And you know my love for Alfredo. It just frustrates me that he is capable of far, far more. I want him, if his Rangers career is coming towards its end, which it sadly looks as though that's going to be the case, I would like it to be a successful period. But I think there's obviously been an injury. I don't know how much training he's been doing, that sort of situation. We've spoke about his physical condition. His physical condition isn't what it needs to be. I mean, it's great that he starts the press there, but he can't maintain that, and that's why he gets taken off with 25 minutes to go, because he's the injury plus his physical condition. He's just not at that level. I think Ross says in the chat, I don't think he'll ever, whether he stays at Rangers or leaves Rangers, he's never going to reach the heights of that sort of Europa League run, scoring 2 goals in Feyenoord, and that was, I would say, probably the peak of his powers. But I don't think he was stinking by any stretch. He should have scored undoubtedly. I thought he got a hold of I thought between 30 and 60 minutes, when Rangers were probably at their best in the game, I think he contributed along with the other front players, and I still think that we'll only truly realise what he brings when he's not there. And this is not a defence of him, but I think he's fundamental to the way that we try to play, and it's going to take a wee bit of time if Čolak is going to be the striker, that he's going to need somebody closer to him. That could be Tillman, that could be Lawrence, sort of thing. I think we've just been used to having Morelos as our, lead the line for so long, and I think it's going to take a bit of getting used to when he's not there, But I think sadly it is coming towards its natural end. But he can still end his Rangers career with a couple of cups and a few goals and that sort of thing, But I would love to see if I could speak his lingo.
Yeah,
I would love 5 minutes with him, just to actually. He is not going to. He may leave Rangers and make a lot of money out of a Bosman move. He will not be idolised in the same way, and he won't play at any club that even comes close to being as big as Rangers. And he's 27. This is a big part of his career. I would love him to knuckle down, but I don't think, and I think from Michael Beale's comments, I think he's pretty much. There's other players that are a priority signing rather than Alfredo, unfortunately.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there, Scott. I think if somebody in the comments could Google translate into Spanish, you won't make it up as a picture on my wall, Alfredo for Scott. That should be a reason enough for him to stay. But
to be fair, though, I don't have him but you know fine well, my wee boy, 5 years old, has got a wall full of Alfredo. That's why he's not on my wall, because the wee man's got them all.
Quite right. Look, Andy, I'm going to come to you the next point here. It was a wee comment Curry Muncher made. He said, Kyle, do you and the lads think that the subs was the first major mistake by Beale, or is it the players that came on? Wright and Sands have signed their P45 for me. This was maybe something that we didn't cover in the post-match, because I think, you know, at the time you kind of think, oh, that's sensible, putting a defensive midfielder on, sensible putting Jack on. You know, well, I'll go through the subs. Lundstrom come off for Jack in 72 minutes. Morelos come off for Scott Wright in 80 minutes, and Tillman come off for James Sands. What's your thoughts on those substitutions, and do you think that it was a mistake by Beale to put those personnel on?
Well, yes, I think it was a mistake, because we ended up dropping 2 points. It was definitely 2 drops from a Rangers perspective in that situation. So, yes, I do think it was a mistake. But what else could he have really done? I'm with you on that, Kyle. His options were the Lundstrom for Jack thing. Yeah, Jack for Lundstrom takes care of itself. We'll ignore that, if you like. Bringing Wright and Sands on. Folk are saying it should have been Cholak or Roof and Arfield, which makes sense. It does make total sense. The best, you hear it all the time, the best form of defence is attack. Now, that does make sense. But as I said earlier, there's nothing to say bringing them on that Celtic don't break throughs, and with 4 attacking players at the top of the pitch, they break us down and they score as well. So I can understand why you done it. But how many times have we seen it when we're 1 goal up, not only against Celtic, against so many teams, you try and sit in and it doesn't work. It invites pressure onto you. And as Scott said earlier on, Celtic are renowned for pushing it to 90, 95 minutes and getting a goal. So that was a risk, but it was obviously one he thought was worth taking. What I will say, I don't like to, is when you look at the difference in the subs, they brought on 3 players who are definitely in the starting 11, Giakoumakis, Jota and Abada, and we brought on Scott Wright and James Sands. If there was anybody out there who still thought that the ring-fenced, if you like, 5 million for James Sands should still be used, I think that ship sadly sailed now. I don't see that happening. He just doesn't seem to have it. He filled a hole in centre half for us, but when it comes to games like that, he's just not got it. But there's nothing else Michael Beale really could have done. What I didn't like, and it's the first thing I've kind of picked up on his post-match, and I like everything he's saying the right things, and he's far more engaging than Van Bronckhorst ever was when it comes to interviews, be it before a game or after a game, I think anyway. He said that had we been 2-1 down, you would have seen Roof or Cholak, but they just weren't ready. That doesn't cut it for me, I'm afraid. If they're not ready, they shouldn't be in the bench then. Do you know what I mean by that? I understand if we're chasing the game 2-1, you fling an attacker on, and a 70% fit attacker probably is more worthwhile than anything in that situation. But if they weren't ready for a game of such magnitude, if we don't win that game, which we never, the league is almost as good as done. I think we're chasing shadows now. We need to try and make inroads into the 9 points. All right, the goal difference as well. That's our job. But we had to win the game. So I understand that. But to make that statement and say that if it was this, then but they weren't quite ready, I don't buy into that. I was quite disappointed with that comment from Michael Beale. But the subs made, I can understand totally why he done it. But I think it was the wrong decision.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement with you there. I think hindsight's a wonderful thing, especially after an Old Firm game. But I think the one he got wrong for me was putting Sands on for Arfield. I think we're seeing a few comments like that as well. But yeah, definitely putting them.
Can I just jump in? And I think I'd said this in the chat over the last couple of days. I think we had retreated. I think the fitness is an issue. I think I don't think we were able to maintain that sort of intensity for much longer, and we were getting deeper and deeper and deeper. I think if Stephen Davis is available, I think Stephen Davis is the substitution instead of James Sands, and I think he is far more experienced and far better on the ball, and would have helped massively with regard to that. But the issue with the bench, no Hadji, no Lawrence, no Stephen Davis. I must, prior to the game, I don't pay a lot of attention. I was slightly surprised at their starting lineup, but your eyes were drawn to their bench, and you thought, if this game's sort of 50-50 going into the last 20-25 minutes. They're bringing on potentially a front three, and we're bringing on, what have we got, sort of situation, but it's it is what it is.
Yeah, well, it is difficult when they're bringing £50 million players off the bench, to be fair. So I'll take that point. Look, Scott Cameron, I'll come to you in this next point. I think it's a good, seeing as we're around about the halfway mark, a good opportunity to take stock. I think Beale said when he first initially came in that he was going to judge the squad and see where he was at 5 games in. That is coming past, obviously. Just run through a quick sort of we run through some of the stats in that. We've had a 3-2 win over Hibs, a 3-2 win over Aberdeen, a 1-0 win away at Ross County, 3-0 against Motherwell, and one of the weirdest games of my life being a Rangers supporter, in the 2-2 game just there on Monday. We have scored 12 goals. We've had, I think, 9 different goal scorers. We've had 2 goals from set plays in that time. Or so maybe it's 3 goals from set plays in that time. I think a TAV penalty and the corner. And yeah, we've conceded 6 goals in that time. What's your thoughts on the way Michael Beale's been so far in terms of coming into Rangers? And it's a simple question. It's why we called the podcast this tonight. Is, do you think we've seen an improvement under Beale at Rangers?
I think so. I think when he came in, I think we all looked at the 5 games. In the ideal situation, you're looking for 15 points. But we had just came off a spell. We dropped points against Livingston, St Mirren and St Johnstone. So he's had I wouldn't say it's the new manager bounce, but there are positive signs. And I think he talks about he's only had, say, 20 sessions on the training field. We're now in a position, apart from the midweek away to Kilmarnock, where there's going to be far more opportunity for him and his coaches to work with the team Monday to Friday, and that can only benefit the performances moving forward. I mean, goals for corners. I mean, my goodness, that's there actually looks as though they are. It's not just Tav running from one side to the other and swinging aimless crosses in. Borna back into the mix is adding something. Just a bit of variety. Tillman's nicked a couple at the front post. I think, what did you say, 9 different goal scorers?
9 different goal scorers.
Which is a huge positive. I think the major negative is the goals conceded, and it's self-inflicted. I don't think Rangers this season have conceded a goal where the guys beat 5 men and stuck it in the top corner. There's always, Tav makes a mistake, they get the ball back, then Ryan Jack gives the ball away, and then it's the goals on Monday, basically. A lot of the problems can get fixed overnight. I think the comment there with regard to the fitness, I think, is an issue. I think there's a huge confidence issue as well. I think there's a lot of the players are still suffering for the sort of, I don't know, trauma's probably the wrong word, but they've had a difficult start to the season. And I think some of them it's been proven they aren't strong mentally, and that doesn't get fixed. Overnight. But I think Michael Beale has got a turn, and I think we'll talk about obviously Ryan Kent. I think Ryan Kent's probably the one who's now coming to life again, and I think you can see there's a clear. Close relationship between the two. I think Michael Beale has spoken about it. He's known the boy since he was 13, 14, and I think Kent looks far happier. And that's, but I think, so far so good, and there's positive signs. Get some players back, get some more time on the training field, and sign a number 6 and a number 8 by the 31st of January.
So you make it sound almost easy there, Scott. Andy, I'll come to you next as well. How would you mark Beale's report card? And I would never normally do this to a manager, but it was him that set the standards himself. 5 games in, he said we know where we are, know where we need to strengthen. How would you mark his first 5 games as Rangers manager?
Pass marks. Very similar to Scott. I give him pass marks. Manager selection is a right and a wrong answer. Van Bronckhorst was the wrong answer. That became clear, especially with the 3 games prior to him leaving. So far, so good, is what Scott said there a minute ago, and I couldn't agree more. It's so far, so good. 9 different goal scorers in the games is fantastic, and I couldn't agree more again with Scott. The 6 goals that we've conceded, it's silly mistakes. We have to stop that. Now, we made silly mistakes under Gerrard and Beale. Of course we did, but nowhere near as much. I can't remember who said it. It came up at the bottom of my screen there. Somebody said that Beale looks shocked at how unfit we are now from when he left us. I think that's the case. We do look unfit. Celtic just created so much space for themselves, I thought, in the first half. A lot of that was to do with us being poor more than Celtic being good, I thought. So that needs addressed, and I'm sure he will address that. But I'll tell you, Kyle, he's so much more engaging. I find myself engaging with him more. He's more fluent. He's honest. He seems honest when he's talking. I did like his wee comment post-match the other day that we don't know, and the media don't know who he fancies in that team yet, and we don't know, and that's the way it should be. He's got to use these players for the best of his ability, and that's what he's doing. He's now got a transfer window. Scott says we need a number 6 or number 8. I'd argue we need a goalkeeper as well. We could also do with another couple of players coming in, but we'll get to that, I'm sure. But as it stands, I'm happy with the start he's made. If somebody said to me the day he signed, you'll get 13 points in the 4th of January, I would probably have taken it. Because I did, as I said before, like Craig, buy in to the Celtic, the media, the Celtic were going to roll over the top of us. Also, I will say that I'm not quite sure that we win the game against Hibs at Ibrox 3-2. And I'm positive we do not win the Aberdeen game 3-2 under Giovanni Van Bronckhorst. I'm quite sure of that. So whether Beale's slowly making the mentality known that to get back into the Rangers team, back into the Rangers way, it looks like it. So yeah, pass marks so far, but we've got a big month coming up, and okay, the title looks as if it's maybe just out of our grasp. You never know. You'll never surrender, but it does look a wee bit tricky. He's got a big 4 months to show that he's going to build a team for next season.
That's it, exactly. He's had a good look at the squad. I think as well, you both alluded to it there. There's comments coming in that I think he's shocked at the, what's the word I'm looking for, regression of some of the players. I think he must have him and Gerrard left that squad in pretty good nick. I think it was no surprise when he came in that he said that he felt that if maybe they carried on that season, I don't know if they'd have got to the Europa League final, but if they felt confident that there was enough players left there to win the league outright. But yes, I agree. I think there has been maybe a wee couple of small things here and there, but I think what Curry Muncher said, I think gave it an 8.5 out of 10. I'll go with that and think that's a fair assessment of it. It's almost like Curry Muncher's had a look at my agenda. I don't know if that's somebody in our group chat that's looking about what we're going to talk about next. But he says here, Kyle, what do you and lads think about bringing in a player not just to improve, but for the captain's position? I know people love Tav, but performance and attitude is so weak. So what I was going to do, I'll come to you first on this, Scott Cameron. I have noticed that in a lot of Beale's post-match press conferences, as fantastic as they are, he hasn't given a lot of mention to guys like, although he did start Lowry against Motherwell, Charlie McCann is not a name I've heard mentioned. Leon King seems to be be put back into that promising role rather than being a starter. But the one that he has mentioned is Adam Devine, and he's mentioned it, I think, on 2 occasions now after a game, that Tav should be looking over his shoulder because he out of the position, Adam Devine on the left. I thought he was excellent for us, and yeah, basically, what do you think about this? Do you think the criticism on Tav's too harsh, or do you think that he is having a poor season and it's time, maybe not time to take him out the squad entirely, but time to just say, listen, need a rest for a couple of weeks and play him against one of the, as you call, one of the jobber sides?
I think he is having a poorer season. I don't even his biggest fans would argue that. You know, I think he set a very high bar, and I think that then makes it all the more noticeable. I know he spoke about all players play with niggles. I don't think he looks as. I don't think he looks as. We talk about fitness. I don't know how much Tav's doing, how much he's done training wise this season, because I think he looks. Whether that's whether it's an age thing, whether it's just a case that he's getting older. He's been at Rangers for 7 years now. Has barely missed a game in those 7 years. Is that just catching up with him? I really don't know. But you're in a situation where he's got two and a bit left in his contract. I think Adam Devine, if he doesn't, I think he should be starting. I'll say St Johnstone in the Scottish Cup in a couple of weeks' time. I think there's an ideal opportunity to. I think we play Kilmarnock on the Wednesday night prior to going to St Johnstone on the Saturday. So Tav's going to be. You're going to be asking Tav to play 3 games inside a week. So there's an opportunity to give Adam Devine the opportunity at right back. Connor Golson's still going to be inside him as the experience. So, Tav's been a fantastic player I don't think anybody would, I think across, he's improved every season since he signed. And I think he's given us far more than any of us could ever have imagined when he signed for Wigan for £200,000. Him and Martin Waghorn sort of thing, it's 7 years, fair play to him. I just, I'm not writing him off. But I think he's got a job on, and I'm not just saying he's got a job on for Adam Devine. We could be looking. We'll talk about succession planning and that sort of situation. I think his position, is he an untouchable now? I don't think he's. Whether he's a captain or not, his performances in the first half of the season haven't been at the standard that they need to be, and he's making a lot of silly mistakes. Fair play that he took one for the team, the header at the back post, and I think he's ended up with a broken nose or something off the back of it, and that's generally an area he's quite weak. But he then 10 minutes later as part of the defence that loses a terrible goal. So I just hope that the one game a week between now and the end of the season helps him to get back to maybe not the same level, but to a better standard of performance.
Yeah. And Andy, your thoughts on the Tav situation in terms of, I think it would be harsh to say to take him out of the squad completely for Adam Devine, but I certainly think there's an opportunity to rest him. As Scott said, they're a guy that's I can hardly think of any games he's not played in the last 7 years, including friendlies, and I think there was maybe a cup game last year, but other than that, he's played a lot of games for Rangers.
I think it's time to start bleeding Devine in. Yep. I don't think it is. I'm still furious about Monday, but it might be. I can't stress enough that he's the Rangers captain, and it's the first 5 minutes of an Old Firm game, which is a must-win at 9 points behind, and he doesn't just clear that player and ball. And there's been so many mistakes, and I feel terrible saying it, but I think it might be time for Devine to get the rest of the season. Why not? He's young. He looks hungry. He looks good. I would play him there with Tav as backup from now till the end of the season. That's not to say that I dislike Tav. The things he's done for Rangers and the games he's played for Rangers, the goals in the Europa League run will live with me forever. But it's Rangers. It's there's no sentiment involved. You get time, but you don't get that much time, even if you are the captain. Now, I know we've just spoke out Paul Le Guen stripping Barry Ferguson of it. I don't want Tav stripped to the captaincy, but I think just with the start of this season, his fitness and the amount of mistakes he's making, I think it's time for Devine to get the rest of the season. Now, he won't play every game, obviously, Devine, so there will be times that Tav can come in, but I would like to see Devine as Rangers' first choice right back for the foreseeable future.
And let's not forget that Tav's been through this before with Nathan Patterson. I think, was it in the end, was it maybe 20 odd games that Patterson had? I don't think all those were at right back, but there was certainly times where maybe 60 minutes in a game he came off for Patterson. So it's something he should be used to. And yeah, I think there's too much of a conversation going on in social media and in our comments at the moment for that not to be the case. But I agree. I think his form has been quite poor. It's not been backed up with the goals, the assists like it normally is. Will Beale bring some of that back? We'll find out. But yeah, I can definitely see, even in the next game against Dundee United, I could possibly see Tav being rested and Devine coming in because he has been so well. Look, Andy, I'll stick with you on this next point as well. It's I know we've talked about it quite a few times, but you know, it's dead interesting. I think the way that Beale's gone on it, the way the supporters have gone on it, but it's the Kent and Alfie situation with their contracts. We're obviously all aware that that both of them can now sign pre-contracts with whoever they want. I can't remember exactly who it was, but there was a comment earlier on that saying, "Do you think that Kent's maybe doing the same thing that Goldson was doing and running it down, and I'll sign a deal last minute?" But what do you think in this? Because for me, it seems to me that Beale's quite keen on keeping Kent, but Morelos is a bit meh at the moment.
I think I totally agree with you on that. I think he does want to keep Kent for obvious reasons. We seem to get the best out of Ryan Kent. What Ryan Kent done on Monday, we need Ryan Kent to do 15 times a season, possibly more, and we're not getting that. Will we get it in future? I believe so. I believe we can. I believe he's still got it. When it comes to Morelos, I think that ship may have sailed, and I think we have a very worthy replacement in Čolak for him. I really, really do. I don't know who it was I spoke to in the WhatsApp group. I think it was even before the Old Firm game on Monday there, and somebody, maybe even Gavin, he mentioned what I believe as well, that Čolak's off the ball work and outside the box work gets seriously overlooked, and I do agree with that. I don't think he offers any less than Alfredo Morelos offers. So if I was to head in a vice and pick one of them, I would pick Ryan Kent. I don't know whether it's going to come down to that within Rangers. Obviously, there's a payment schedule there, a wages schedule, so they'll need to come to some sort of agreement. But if there is a chance there to move Alfredo Morelos on and use some of the funds to keep Ryan Kent, that's a no-brainer for me. I think that'll benefit Michael Beale. It'll benefit Rangers in the long term as well. It's very sad to see the back of Alfredo Morelos, but I think we are going to see the back of Alfredo Morelos soon.
Yes, a sad day. I know. Do you want the tissues? Could somebody quick pass Scott Cameron the tissues someday? But it'll happen, and I don't envy you the task of having to tell your wee lad that, Scott. But look, I'll come to you in the next point. It's just the kind of final point of the podcast here. I'm sure we'll spend the next sort of 10 minutes talking about it, but it's the transfer rumours. I see lots of people suggesting people we should be linked with, lots of people saying who should be out the door. But there's I thought Beale's comments post-match were really, really interesting here. There was quite a lot of players. He mentioned Hadji, Lawrence, Suter, Ridvan, Čolak, and I do know why, because he was so good under him, but he mentions Roof every single time. He said that he's looking to add 2 or 3 more, talks about creating competition, talks about there being no point in bringing in players in the short term. I think this is maybe a sort of thinly, not a dig, but just a statement to the board to say, I don't want what we had last season in terms of bringing in Diallo, in terms of bringing in Ramsey in just to appease the fans. But he says we need players that are going to be playing for Rangers in the next 2-3 years. And reassuringly, he seems to have got a few in mind. Where would you say that Rangers need to strengthen?
I think the middle of the park. I think I've been on and on and on about it for a long time. A number 6, a la Stephen Davis. But I'd quite like not just somebody that's a nice footballer, somebody that can get about the pitch. Even if they're flexible, it's like, see players that can play as a 6 or an 8 sort of thing, But I think the middle of the park has been badly needing investment. who was the last player we paid cash for in the middle of the park? You know what I mean? Somebody in the comments will probably let me know. Carlos Pena or Morris Edu or somebody like that. You know, but listen, we've had good value out of a lot of the players, but I think some of them are just coming towards the end of their time as starters for Rangers. There are other positions that undoubtedly need to be improved. The January window worries me slightly in the regard that it's a very difficult month. It's very difficult to get what you want. It's interesting. Michael Beale talks very well, and I think he's very open and far more engaging. And I think potentially maybe talks too much, but that's just that's just an aside. I'm interested to know who he's got his eyes on, you know, and I think I would hope that when the negotiations for him to come back in November, I think conversations would have happened. I don't think on the 1st of January we've just suddenly decided. I think we should sign some players, you know. So I would hope that planning is in place. But I think for January, middle of the park. But see if we got to the 31st of January and we hadn't signed anybody, I can only imagine what social media would be like. And I can only imagine, I'm not putting my hand up to do the podcast on the 31st of January if that is the case. But it needs to be a starter. It has to be what Michael Beale is saying. You know, there isn't any point in just signing players for the sake of it. And Ross Wilson looking really chuffed with himself, peering outside the front door at Ibrox at midnight because we've wheeled out somebody that's not going to contribute. You know, I mean, it's a name that's always linked is Billy Gilmour. Now Billy Gilmour would fit the 6 or the 8. There is not a hope in hell of us signing Billy Gilmour after any loan. So there would not be no point. If you could get Billy Gilmour and you could sign him for $5 million with an obligation to buy or an option to buy, I think he would probably be a decent addition. But we're not going to be able to afford. We're not going to be able to afford them. That's the problem. But I'm just interested to know. I'd love to see the list of names that Michael Beale and Ross Wilson are working with at the moment, and we'll see what the next few weeks bring.
Yeah, it'll be dead interesting. And Andy, just your thoughts on any areas that do you think similar to Scott in terms of the areas that we need to highlight or improve on, or have you got your own thoughts on that?
No, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly with Scott. In the middle of the park for me as well. It's going to sound like a cliche, and it is a cliche, but having Lawrence, Roof, Hadji, and Yilmaz coming back will be like 4 new signings. You know, that is a total cliche, but it is, and I'm genuinely excited to see Tom Lawrence back in the squad as soon as possible for me. I think we need a number 6, as Scott calls it, a number 8 as well, or somebody that can do both. That would benefit. Unfortunately, I love Glenn Kamara, I love John Lundstrom, I love Ryan Jack, but we're not going to win leagues over 38 games with these 3 as the main midfielders. We really need to strengthen there. I'd like to see some movement for a goalkeeper. We spoke earlier on the WhatsApp group whether or not Michael Beale sees John McLaughlin as the Rangers number 1 next season. I don't think he does. I think we're going to have to go and sign someone. What I do like about Michael Beale's attitude is that we need to sign first team starters to benefit the first team, and no loans. You know, it's got to be somebody who'll be at Rangers for the next 3 seasons. Now that may well turn out to be a soundbite. It might well be a soundbite, but I'm with Scott. There is no way when they sat down in November or whenever it was to agree a deal for Michael Beale to come and manage Rangers that he's not had some sort of assurances. He's a football man. He probably didn't keep as much of an eye on Rangers as we would like to believe. He probably had a wee look up here now and then. But he will know the ins and outs of the squad. He will know what's available and where it would need strengthening. So there's no ways he signed that dotted line with no assurances, in my opinion. So it's going to be a very interesting month. I'm a great believer in that no massive signings happen in January. I hope I'm wrong. I wouldn't like to be on the podcast, especially with Scott, the 31st of January, if we don't. So I'll just put my hands down for that one as well, Scott. So that's me and you out. So I don't know who's going to be on. We'll find somebody, I'm sure. But I'm confident we'll hopefully get somebody in. But I don't imagine it will be big squad changing signings. That doesn't generally happen in January. You're looking for Michael Beale to use January to maybe get one in, and then from February to May to see exactly what he's got to do in the summertime. That's what I'll be hoping for, and I'm quite sure it'll materialise.
Yeah, that's it there. I ran a poll on our Twitter here, and we asked, what did you guys think on Twitter? Where should we prioritise in terms of our spending, in terms of our buying? It was remarkable as I saw I think we ended up getting about 2,500 votes in at the end of the day. But as I saw it going up and up and up and up, I could not believe how steady it was, how consistent the result was. We had 15% said that we needed a number 6 and a goalkeeper. That was our main priority. We had 20% saying that right wing was the next top priority. But the vast majority of people on Twitter said 51% said that a centre midfield, a number 8, basically a replacement for Ryan Jack, which would maybe suggest that he might be out in the summer. But this is the bit of the podcast that I know you two have been looking forward to the most, is when I just chuck names at you and none of us really know anything about them. But there's a few here. I'll come to you first on this, Scott Cameron. I know you've already given your thoughts on maybe a couple of these guys, but the two in particular I'm going to pick out is Asmir Begovic, a goalkeeper, and the other one that's been certainly doing the rounds on Twitter at the moment is John Fleck with Sheffield United. What's your thoughts on those two guys?
Asmir Begovic, I think I spoke about this in the Celtic preview. He's one of these goalkeepers that has had a decent career, hasn't really been a first team keeper for the last 3 or 4 years, and is just basically picking up a wage. And I don't think has got any aspirations to be a number 1. So I would hope that we are a number 1 should have came in last summer, but it has to happen this summer. So at Begovic, not for me. I mean, you see today Jack Butland linked with Man United. I mean, that's a guy that was in the England squad 2 or 3 years ago, and now he's going to be quite happy to go to Man United, probably his third choice, because they bring Henderson back for Notts Forest. They've got De Gea, Henderson, Butland. These guys are just quite happy picking up 15, 20 grand a week and no play. John Fleck, 4 or 5 years ago, without a doubt. I think he's had a lot of injuries over the course of the last couple of seasons. 31 now. I think isn't particularly mobile. Nice footballer on the ball, has had a good career. Fair play to him. He ticks the Scottish box, but we don't really need another player that's going to be keeping certain players company in the treatment room for me. So 31 years old. He's just I can see the link, and I'm interested. It was Chris Boyd that put the link out there. I don't know, is it one of his mates sort of thing? I think John Fleck wants to get up the road to be with family, which is fair enough. But we aren't a retirement home. We need players at Rangers that are actually going to make us better. We talk about the middle of the park just now, not having any legs. Players that can't get about the pitch. This is where I think certain elements of the media, they need to think. Chris Boyd will be the same one to tell you that there's no enough legs in the Rangers midfield. There's no enough goals in the Rangers midfield. There's no this, there's no that. Aye, but we'll sign John Fleck. We'll give him 25 grand a week, and he's not going to bring anything. He's not going to bring anything that we need. I think Lowry would be better than Fleck. I think they're two totally different players at this stage in their career. John Fleck, when he was breaking through, was a sort of number 10. But he's obviously, as he's got older, he's went back to be the sort of number 6, But nah, not for me on both counts there, Kyle.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement with you there, Scott. I think the the fact it's been Chris Boyd's mentioned his pal John Fleck. I think it's a bit of the jobs for the boys type scenario there. But yeah, the only thing Fleck's got going for him is the fact that he would count towards our quota of the homegrown talent. Other than that, can't see it. Andy, these next two, I'm not expecting you to talk about the players here. It's just I'm a bit surprised that we've actually been linked with this as a position in terms of an area that we need to strengthen, given the abundance of centre halves that we've got at the moment. Where's the comment here? It was this guy here. RFC 72 says a young centre back from Antwerp we linked with William Pacho is very good. Another one I've seen doing the rounds was a guy called Dion Sanderson, who's an English 23-year-old. He's on loan at Birmingham at the moment from Wolves, a guy that Beale's seen clearly and maybe identified. Do you think centre half's an area that we need to improve on?
Not particularly. I meant to say earlier in the podcast, actually, I'm quite happy to go into the rest of the season with Goldson and Davies. I really am. I thought they work well together. Very impressed with Davies in Monday there. Conor Goldson obviously does what Conor Goldson does. I'm quite happy with him. I don't think it's a massive area we need to strengthen in. We don't know how long John Suter going to be out for. We don't know. Leon King, he was definitely making inroads. Is he back to the promising category now rather than a first team starter? We don't know. Hollander, will we ever see him again? I don't think it's somewhere we need to strengthen. It's obviously somewhere the history over the last couple of years has taught us that you have to have reinforcements there. I don't think strengthen is the correct word to use there. I don't see that being an area we have to strengthen. It's always good to get reinforcements here, but as for these boys that you just mentioned, I couldn't tell you how good they are or would they be strengthened. I've absolutely no clue. I'll leave that to the younger boys that follow all these names about Europe. I certainly don't. I don't think it's a massive area needing strengthened, but we definitely need reinforcements there. That's history's taught us that.
Yeah, totally agree with you there. I was surprised when I saw us getting linked with centre halves, especially the fact that we've signed Goldson in the summer. They are signed Davies and Suter as well. So I just with their injury records, I'm just not too sure about that. Look, Scott Cameron, the next couple of names that I'll come on to you with. Again, don't know an awful lot about the guys. There's a guy here, Benny Umkende, I think you would say his name, who plays for Trofense in the second league in Portugal, a guy that I've not heard of, and another guy called Luca Kerber, who's German and plays in the German third division. The only thing that is filling me with any sort of positivity with either of these guys is that they've been linked with teams like Braga and Brighton. What do you think? Do we need to be wary of this now in terms of that agents are now going to be going, let's just say that we're in talks with Brighton or Braga or something like that and try and punt the value up? Or are you encouraged the fact that Rangers are now being mentioned in amongst guys that potentially could be gotten for, very cheap and fall into that Brighton model now where they seem to be going for extraordinary fees?
I think it's encouraging, but I think there is a danger that you get suckered in, and the club gets suckered in. But you would hope that we are doing our scouting and doing our due diligence properly with regard to it. It's at the end of the day, there's names getting thrown about like right, left, and centre. It's generally agents that are doing the best for their sort of their client sort of thing, just to try and get the best, feeding stories to the media and that sort of situation, So I don't know. Again, I don't know anything on either player, but I link with Brighton on paper appears a positive thing, but it's all guesswork at the moment. I think we would all like an early signing to sort of calm the jets of everybody a wee bit, But I think we don't know, because nothing really gets out of Rangers now, So nobody really knows if any of these links are they just on a really long list of players, the agents know that, and then they're putting it out there. I really don't know, Kyle.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you there. And Andy, I'm going to give you the final word in terms of tonight. There was a comment earlier on from Curry Muncher, and he was asking, again, it is honestly like he's seen my agenda for this, but it's talking about some of the young players. I know we alluded to it a wee bit earlier on in the podcast, but guys like Leon King, Lowry, Devine, McCann. What do you think of these guys? Do you think any of these guys will feature in Beale's plans going forward, or do you think that these guys will now be seen as backups if people get injured?
I'd like to think he would use between now and the summertime to see exactly what these boys can do, because that's what I would like to see happen. I would like to see Lowry and Devine and perhaps King and that get a wee run in the team, see what they can do, and see where he has to buy in the summertime. Willie, I don't know. Lowry certainly, Devine certainly, King not so sure. But I'm a great believer in playing the young ones there, seeing how they got on. And the only way to see how they got on is to put them in the first team and see how they got on. So that's his job between now and in May. Just to go back quickly to the transfer thing, I'm like every other Rangers fan. I get excited when it gets to January, and you need some players, you need strengthening here and there, and you look at these players and you're linked in the paper with this one and that one. I was incredibly excited about Rabbi Matondo coming. It doesn't always work. You could always pay 3-4 million. It doesn't work. Look across the city at the goalkeeper they bought a couple of seasons ago. 5 million they paid. Hopeless. What matters is that the manager, and it has to be the manager, I believe, goes and finds somebody in an area he's got to strengthen in, and he picks the player and he goes and gets him and he fits that model. So that's what I'm hoping for. Yeah,
totally agree with you there. I think it's until they've got that jersey on and they're holding that scarf above their heads at Auckland Howie, that's when it matters the most. So, look, it's been a really good pod. Again, there was plenty to discuss there. I think we've done a good job of getting into it. Thanks for joining us, Andy.
Anytime, pleasure.
And thanks for joining us, Scott, as well.
Thanks, guys. I've thoroughly enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's just, it'll take me a wee while to get over the fact that I saw in the comments that Ross admitted to having an OnlyFans account, but I'll leave that for the bosses of This Is Ibrox to...
Doesn't surprise me, by the way. Doesn't surprise
me. to deal with. But look, for all those that didn't catch Monday's podcast, I just want to wish everybody that's viewing and watching out there a happy new year, and I think we all want at least a couple of cups, and hopefully we get that. Just remember, give us a like and subscribe anywhere you can. We're across all the usual socials, and our next pod will be, I think, the triumphant return of Scott Patterson on Friday night. Housewife's favourite, so make sure you're tuning into that one. I'm sure he'll be covering the Dundee United game. But as always, thanks for watching. Take care, everybody, and if I can find this outro video here, we'll see you again soon.